Hello and welcome to The Psychology of Us with Professor RJ Starr, where we explore the mind's influence on life, relationships, and society. RJ Starr is an existential psychologist, professor, and author dedicated to exploring the core challenges of human existence, how we find meaning, embrace responsibility, and navigate life's challenges. Known for a thought-provoking yet accessible approach, RJ inspires listeners to cultivate self-awareness, emotional intelligence, authenticity, and purpose. This podcast is designed for all psychology enthusiasts, practitioners, students, and anyone curious about why we think, feel, and behave the way we do. Each episode unpacks theories, explores complex questions, and offers insights that deepen understanding of the human experience. So settle in, stay curious, and discover the psychology of us.
Hello and welcome to The Psychology of Us with me, Professor RJ Starr. This podcast is all about diving into the intricacies of human behavior, exploring the why behind what we do, and maybe even finding ways to live a little more thoughtfully along the way. Today, I want to talk about something that feels like it's affecting everyone, everywhere, all the time. It's something you've probably felt yourself, maybe even today. You click on an article, skim a few paragraphs, and then move on to the next thing. Or maybe you start a podcast episode, like this one, and jump to another show before you get to the end. It's not that we don't want to pay attention, but for so many of us, it feels like our focus has become fragmented, scattered into smaller and smaller pieces. Does that sound familiar? If it does, I promise you're not alone. It's not just you. It's not even entirely your fault. In this episode, we're going to break down why this happens, how it impacts us, both personally and as a society, and most importantly, what we can do to reclaim our ability to focus deeply and meaningfully. Now, let me ask you something. When was the last time you sat with something long enough to truly absorb it? Maybe it was a book, or a film, or even a conversation with a friend. How did it feel? Did you notice a difference compared to when you're just jumping from one thing to the next? Hold on to that memory, because we're going to circle back to it later. Before we dive into the psychology of it all, I want to set the stage. You see, our brains are remarkable, but they're also limited. And in the digital world we live in today, they're being pushed in ways they've never been pushed before. Platforms and apps are designed to keep us hooked, feeding us little dopamine hits every time we scroll, click, or swipe. It's like being handed one piece of candy after another, sweet and satisfying in the moment, but not exactly nourishing in the long run. And here's the thing. These patterns of fragmented focus don't just affect what we consume. They shape how we think, how we learn, and how we connect with others. The consequences are far-reaching, and they show up in ways we might not even notice at first. So, for the next half hour, let's do something rare. Let's slow down. Let's think deeply about what's happening to our attention, and, by extension, our lives. I'll share some of the psychological theories that explain this shift, a few case studies and personal stories that might resonate with you, and some practical ideas for how we can push back against the constant pull of distraction. I'm glad you're here, and I'm excited to explore this topic with you. Let's get started. Let's begin by looking at the question, why are so many of us struggling to stay focused? To answer that, we need to start with how our brains are wired. You see, our brains evolved to help us survive in an environment very different from the one we live in now. For thousands of years, our ancestors were constantly scanning their surroundings for threats or opportunities. Focus was important, but so was being able to shift attention quickly if something unexpected happened. That ability to be alert and responsive? It's one of the reasons we're here today. Now, fast forward to the world we live in. There aren't saber-toothed tigers lurking behind bushes anymore, but our brains are still wired to respond to novelty, and the digital age has taken full advantage of that. Every notification, every ding, every headline screaming for our attention is like a tiny alarm going off in our brain. Our attention is constantly being hijacked, and we don't even realize it most of the time. One of the theories that helps explain this is cognitive load theory. Simply put, your brain has a limited capacity for processing information at any given time. Imagine you're carrying a tray of water glasses. If someone adds just one more glass, it might tip the whole thing over. That's what happens with your attention. When there's too much information coming at you, email alerts, social media posts, ads, texts, your brain starts to feel overloaded. And instead of focusing deeply on one thing, you skim, you jump, and you try to take in bits and pieces of everything. But it's not just the amount of information, it's also the design of the platforms we use. Enter the attention economy. This is the idea that your attention is one of the most valuable commodities in the world today. Think about it. Companies like Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube make money by keeping you engaged for as long as possible. They've perfected the art of feeding you content in short, satisfying bursts designed to keep your dopamine flowing. Here's a quick example. Have you ever noticed how TikTok videos are just long enough to grab your attention, but short enough to keep you scrolling? That's not an accident. It's a design choice. The algorithm learns what you like and keeps serving it to you. The reward centers of your brain light up every time you see something new and interesting. And before you know it, you've spent an hour scrolling without even realizing it.
I'll admit, I've fallen into this trap myself. There was a day not too long ago when I picked up my phone to check one notification, just one, and 30 minutes later, I was watching videos about something I don't even remember now. When I finally put the phone down, I felt a little embarrassed. How had I just lost half an hour like that? But it also made me think about how powerful these systems are at pulling us in.
Another factor at play here is instant gratification. Our devices have trained us to expect immediate rewards. Think about it. When you Google something, how long are you willing to wait for the answer? A few seconds, maybe? And when you don't get that instant response, it feels frustrating. This expectation for speed has made deeper, more focused activities, like reading a book or listening to a full podcast episode, feel harder than they really are. It's fascinating, though, because the brain's reward system hasn't changed. It's still looking for those dopamine hits. What's changed is how we're getting them. Instead of the slow, satisfying reward of completing a project or having a meaningful conversation, we're settling for quick, fleeting hits from likes, shares, and notifications. There's also something else I want to bring up here, the Zeigarnik effect. This is the idea that unfinished tasks stick in our minds more than completed ones. It's why you can't stop thinking about the email you haven't replied to or the project that's half done. But here's the twist. In today's world, we're constantly jumping from one unfinished task to another. We start reading an article, but we don't finish it. We start a video, but we don't watch the whole thing. And all those unfinished tasks pile up in our minds, creating a sense of mental clutter. So, what does all of this mean? It means that our environment isn't just distracting us, it's training us to be distracted. The constant flow of information, the design of our technology, and our own biological responses are all working together to pull our attention in 100 different directions. But here's the good news. Understanding these forces is the first step in taking back control. By the time we're done with this episode, I want you to feel empowered to recognize when your attention is being hijacked, and more importantly, how you can refocus it on what truly matters. Now that we've explored why our attention is so fragmented, let's turn our focus to the impact it has on us, on how we think, how we connect with others, and even how we experience the world. Because while it might seem harmless to skim articles or hop between videos, the effects of these habits run much deeper than we might realize. Let's start with learning. One of the most concerning consequences of fragmented focus is superficial learning. When we consume information in tiny bites, we often think we've absorbed enough to form a full understanding. But in reality, what we're getting is just the surface. Here's a phenomenon that illustrates this well: the Dunning-Kruger effect. This is a cognitive bias where people with limited knowledge overestimate their understanding of a subject. Now think about how this plays out in today's digital landscape. Someone watches a 2-minute clip or skims a headline and suddenly feels like an expert. It's not intentional. Our brains are just wired to fill in gaps and assume we know more than we do. But what we're left with is an illusion of knowledge, not true comprehension.
Let me share a story to bring this to life. A few years ago, I had a conversation with a student who was convinced they understood a complex psychological concept because they'd watched a short explainer video. They could repeat the basics, sure, but when I asked them to go deeper, to connect it to other theories or real-world applications, they hit a wall. That's not their fault. It's the result of a system that rewards surface-level engagement over depth.
But it's not just our ability to learn that's affected. Fragmented focus also takes a toll on our relationships. When our attention is constantly divided, we lose the ability to be fully present with the people around us. Have you ever been in a conversation where the other person was half listening, nodding along while scrolling through their phone? Or maybe you've caught yourself doing the same. Psychologists have studied this phenomenon and found that it erodes empathy. When we're distracted, we miss the subtle cues, tone of voice, facial expressions, body language that help us understand and connect with others. This isn't just a theory, it's something we've all felt. I remember sitting with a friend over lunch one day. They were scrolling through their phone as I spoke, and even though they were physically there, it felt like they weren't really present. And I'll admit, there have been times when I've been the distracted one too. There's even a term for this, phubbing, short for phone snubbing. Research shows that when people feel ignored in this way, it damages trust and connection. And when this becomes a habit, when we're always half engaged, it starts to affect the quality of our relationships in ways we might not even notice until it's too late.
And then there's the impact on our mental health. Constant distraction doesn't just make us scattered, it makes us anxious. Think about it. When your attention is divided between 100 different things, it creates a sense of mental clutter. You start to feel overwhelmed, like there's too much to do and not enough time to do it. Studies have shown that media multitasking, like scrolling your phone while watching TV or working, can increase stress levels and reduce our ability to focus over time. It's as if our brains are stuck in a state of constant stimulation, unable to settle into a calmer, more focused rhythm.
Let me share something personal here. I used to believe I was great at multitasking. I'd have a podcast playing while grading papers, with email open on one screen and a book on the other. But over time, I started to notice something. I wasn't really present for any of it. I'd have to reread passages, re-listen to parts of the podcast, and my stress levels were higher than ever. It wasn't until I made a conscious effort to single task, to give my full attention to one thing at a time, that I started to feel more grounded. So, what's the cost of fragmented focus? It's more than just missing the details. It's a loss of depth. Depth in our knowledge, depth in our connections, and depth in our own sense of calm and clarity. But here's the thing, we're not powerless in the face of these challenges. There are ways to push back against the pull of distraction, to reclaim our ability to focus and engage deeply. And that's exactly what we're going to explore next. So now that we've unpacked why our attention is so fragmented and the cost it has on our lives, let's turn to the most important part. What can we do about it? How do we reclaim our focus in a world that's constantly pulling us in every direction? First, I want to introduce you to a fascinating psychological principle called the Zeigarnik effect. It's the idea that unfinished tasks stick in our minds far more than completed ones. Think about it. When you leave an email half-written or an article half-read, it tends to linger in the back of your mind, creating this low-level sense of unease. Now imagine living in a constant state of unfinished business. That's what happens when we jump from task to task, from post to post, from video to video. Our minds are cluttered with fragments, unread articles, half-watched videos, incomplete thoughts. And it's no wonder we feel scattered. The first step to reclaiming our attention is understanding this effect and recognizing when it's at play. One way to counteract it is to practice intentional consumption. That means making a conscious decision to finish what you start, or if it's not worth your time, to leave it behind completely. Here's an example from my own life. I used to have a habit of opening 10 different tabs on my browser, each one representing something I wanted to read or watch. But I'd rarely get through them all, and those unfinished tabs would weigh on me. So, I made a rule for myself. No more than 2 tabs open at a time, and I have to finish one before moving on to the next. It sounds simple, but it was transformative. Another key to reclaiming our attention is to challenge the culture of instant gratification. We've been trained to expect immediate rewards, quick answers, fast responses, instant entertainment. But meaningful focus takes time. It's like planting a seed. You can't expect it to bloom overnight. You have to nurture it.
One way to do this is to carve out moments of deep focus. Start small. Maybe it's reading one article all the way through or listening to an entire podcast episode, like this one, without distractions. I know it's easier said than done, especially with phones buzzing and emails pinging. But here's a tip. Create a focus-friendly environment. Turn off notifications, put your phone in another room, and set a timer for 20 or 30 minutes to give yourself permission to focus on one thing. Mindfulness practices can also help. Now, I know mindfulness can sound a little trendy, but at its core, it's about training your mind to stay present. Simple things, like paying full attention to your breath, or focusing on the sensation of your feet on the ground, can help you build the mental muscles you need to resist distractions.
And speaking of mindfulness, I want to share something I've been doing recently that's had a huge impact on my own attention. I've started what I call media fasting. Once a week, I take a break from all non-essential media. No social media, no YouTube, no endless scrolling. At first, it felt uncomfortable, almost like I didn't know what to do with myself. But over time, I noticed that I felt calmer, more focused, and even a little more creative.
Another approach I want to talk about is the idea of choosing quality over quantity. Not all content is created equal. Some things are worth your time and attention because they enrich you, challenge you, or help you grow. Other things, not so much. And this isn't just about entertainment. It applies to relationships, work, and learning too.
Let me share an analogy I love. Think of your attention as a currency. Every time you pay attention to something, you're investing in it. So the question is, what are you investing in? Are you investing in things that nourish you and bring you closer to your goals? Or are you spending your attention on things that drain you and leave you feeling empty? Here's one last strategy I want to share. Build in moments of reflection. Our fast-paced, fragmented world doesn't leave much room for stillness, but stillness is where clarity lives. Try this. At the end of the day, take 5 minutes to reflect on how you spent your attention. Did it align with your values? Did it bring you closer to the person you want to be? These moments of self-awareness can be incredibly powerful in helping you make more intentional choices moving forward. Reclaiming your attention isn't about perfection. It's about progress. It's about recognizing that yes, we live in a distracting world, but we have the power to choose what we focus on. And if you've made it this far into the episode, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that. Staying engaged, staying present, it's no small feat in today's world, but it's also one of the most valuable things you can do for yourself. So, thank you for spending this time with me. It means more than you know. As we come to the end of this episode, I want to thank you for sticking with me. In a world that constantly pulls us in 1,000 directions, making the effort to focus, to reflect, and to truly engage is no small thing. It's a gift you've given yourself, and one I don't take lightly.
We've covered a lot today. We talked about why our attention is so fragmented, from the way our brains evolved to the powerful pull of the attention economy. We explored the costs of living in a state of constant distraction, how it affects our ability to learn, to connect, and to feel truly present in our own lives. And we ended by discussing practical steps to reclaim our attention. From practicing intentional consumption to choosing quality over quantity, carving out moments of deep focus, and embracing reflection.
If there's one thing I want you to take away from this episode, it's this. Your attention is one of the most valuable things you have. Where you direct, it shapes your thoughts, your relationships, and ultimately, your life. And while the world may try to pull you in every direction, you have the power to choose where you focus. So let me leave you with a small challenge. This week, pick one thing, just one, that deserves your full attention. Maybe it's finishing a book you've started. Maybe it's listening to a loved one without distractions. Or maybe it's simply taking a moment to sit quietly with your own thoughts. Whatever it is, let it be a reminder that you can take back control of your focus, one choice at a time. Thank you for spending your time with me today. It's the most valuable thing you could give, and I don't take it for granted. I hope you found something meaningful in this episode, something that stays with you beyond these 30 minutes.
If you enjoyed this conversation, or if it sparked any thoughts or questions, I'd love to hear from you. You can reach me at Professor RJ Starr at outlook.com. Your feedback, your ideas, and your own experiences mean so much, and they help shape future episodes of The Psychology of Us.
Until next time, take care of your mind, your focus, and the things that matter most to you. I'm Professor RJ Starr, and this has been The Psychology of Us. See you next time.
That wraps up this episode of The Psychology of Us with Professor RJ Starr. Each conversation is a step toward greater understanding of ourselves, each other, and the forces that shape human behavior. Listeners are invited to continue the conversation by sharing their thoughts, questions, and topic suggestions at profrjstarr@outlook.com. Every message helps shape future episodes, ensuring the discussions remain relevant, thought-provoking, and meaningful. For those who find value in these explorations, subscribing and leaving a review is a great way to support the podcast and bring these insights to a wider audience. Until next time, stay curious, stay thoughtful, and keep exploring the psychology of us.